Hello and welcome to session 20. Let's continue where we left off. It's my hope that by the time you finish this series of videos, and perhaps even by now, you will have begun to discover what some of the answers may be to those questions that you've been watching here, the questions that we've been asking. Nevertheless, despite the efforts of many well-informed people, the ultra-wealthy, using the corporate media and those whom they, the ultra-wealthy, support for public office, they're all extremely skilled in their persuasive powers, and they have, on a continuing basis, been able to either convince a large percentage of the voters that their plan, whatever the cause or need, is the best plan to follow, or they've been able to divide the people in such a way that the people's efforts are diffused, are diluted, and the programs that would truly benefit the vast majority of America's families never see the light of day. That's why we ended up with watered-down healthcare legislation. And although the regulatory legislation that passed was somewhat more of what is truly needed, it still was not all that it could have and should have been. The same or worse is likely to be true for the supposedly upcoming energy legislation that is so needed by the United States and elsewhere. You don't hear anybody even talking about it anymore. Change is desperately needed, and it is not being implemented, and I am saying to you that although the President seems to be making a great effort, it takes both sides to make the kind of change that's needed. And we, as the people of this nation, must demand to know why this is not taking place. Knowledge of the following, hopefully, will be an additional help in bringing the vast majority of the people of the country to the point where they demand to know why the needed changes have not been made. Trust me when I tell you that they will not see what you are learning here by watching you will not see what you're learning here by watching the mainstream media. The ultra-wealthy believe that large quantities of capital should be in their hands, and that as they invest and spend it, this will cause or allow the money to trickle down to the average working family. This is called the trickle-down theory. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's my strong feeling, however, that the average family is feeling more and more trickled on, and they should be getting tired of it by now. I'm certain that if those at the top had been receiving similar treatment for as long as the average working family has been, they would be extremely tired of it too. That's why the politicians who are backed by the ultra-wealthy are always so careful to try to make it all sound really great. They want it to appear as if their programs will be so helpful to everyone and that the programs put forth by their opposition will ruin the country. They always want to keep us divided by making everything us versus them, with them being the ones whom the wealthy want you to believe are the cause of all your problems. It should be very evident that they've had great success in their efforts to persuade the people of the country to their way of thinking, since the results of the last several presidential elections seem to show that the people are fairly evenly divided. Those who do not agree with the policies espoused by the representatives of the ultra-wealthy elite, those who want to really help, tend to believe that a decent job with a living wage should be available to all the workers of our country. These persons, however, are very seldom elected, and if elected, are almost always prevented from being effective in their efforts, as is now being done to the current president by the conservative opposition in Congress and the media. Despite other definitions that are currently being used, I personally define a decent living wage as a wage that will allow the wage earner to provide adequate and decent food, housing, clothing, education, insurance, medical care, transportation, and other necessities, as well as a reasonable amount of recreation for themselves and their families. A wage that forces families to scrape by without being able to afford some or many of these necessities, that's not a true living wage. When these workers are paid a true living wage, then they'll spend their wages to provide these necessities for their families. And that money, under the current way of doing things, will eventually find its way to those at the top who already own and control a very disproportionate share of the industry and capital in this country. To make certain that things continue to go their way, however, the ultra-wealthy and their representatives, as already stated, have an agenda, and they have been and still are working tirelessly to make certain that their agenda becomes the permanent law of the land. And if they're unable to accomplish that under the new administration elected in 2008, then they will, as you're now seeing, do everything possible to block any and all legislation that might, even in small ways, benefit the people, especially if that somehow might cost a few more dollars to the corporate structure and the wealthy who own and or control that corporate structure, and those who are so heavily invested in the success of that corporate structure and in corporations achieving ever higher profits. Excuse me. Some truly significant changes must be made in America so that those who do their best to work hard and play by the rules will receive fair and decent treatment, including a decent job with a true living wage. That's currently not the case. America has been, is now, and I believe will continue to be one of the greatest countries that has ever existed. But we've been rushing at breakneck speed in the wrong direction for a number of years. And even though the Obama administration appears at least to want to change all of that for the better, going so far and so fast in that wrong direction during the previous and other administrations has cost us far too many of the benefits, rights, and freedoms that so many have worked so hard for so long to attain for us. Those who have voted for the policies of the very wealthy because they believed all of those misrepresented so-called facts would be wise to wake up and smell the coffee. The country has been had by those hardcore members in the upper ranks of the movement run by the representatives of the ultra-wealthy who have planned their work well and who are working their plan very effectively, even though we now have an administration that, at the very least, gives the appearance of trying to improve things to a significant degree. And I hope that he is as sincere as I believe him to be. Time will tell. But things don't look too good. Perhaps that talk from representatives of the Business Roundtable has affected his policies. By the way, if you believe that such conversations never take place, you should read a book by a man called John Perkins about economic hitmen. There are also some shows on some of the TV channels about that. Apologies of an economic hitman. If it happens in other countries that begin to pursue policies not liked by those who make or break the high-level politicians, what makes you think it wouldn't happen here under the same circumstances? Again, don't forget the Business Roundtable. Their only idea is profits, profits, and greater profits. That's what they're all about. Let's consider further the fierce partisan nature of politics in recent years. Some pundits and politicians from both sides, as indicated, excuse me, have found that there are a number of ways to appeal to what I call the lowest common denominator within the public consciousness, to make liberal or conservative a dirty word to as many people as possible. And from where I'm sitting, it appears that they haven't missed many opportunities to do so. It may happen in print, on television, or on the radio, but a quick zinger can soon become a soundbite, which often then makes its way onto national or international news broadcasts, and is then repeated ad infinitum. When there is such a difference in opinion, it disturbs me when I hear a person on one side attempt to ridicule those on the other side, even by such a tactic as name-calling. The reason for the name-calling is almost always because the person doing the name-calling suspects that their own argument or point of view doesn't have a great deal of substance or merit, or perhaps they're not being as persuasive as they would like to be. Therefore, to divert attention from the real issue or issues at hand, they initiate a personal attack on the person or persons with the opposing point of view. As I've pointed out, it's true that there are those on both sides who continue to do such things. It seems to be in fashion for many politicians and pundits, and since this kind of tactic is generally used when their argument has insufficient substance or logic to stand well on its own, then that would, to me, indicate a serious weakness in the substance of that person's point of view. The news media, of course, loves such confrontations because they can milk such matters for days in order to get the last ounce of profit from every such disagreement, without ever really dealing with the true substance of the matter at hand, or without ever really being concerned about what would truly be the best for the nation and its people, thereby ignoring many important issues that are critical for the well-being of the people and the country. They're just interested in profits. Isn't that a shame? I want to thank you for watching. In session 21, we'll consider whether we can depend on certain elected officials to even tell the truth. I want to thank you for watching.